Hello everyone, welcome back to Day News K-Wave Chanel. For a long time, timelines felt eerily quiet. Interactions people used to analyze were suddenly gone. Shared moments felt distant, and many fans began whispering the same painful question. Was this really the end of Jikook as everyone knew him? Social media slowly filled with doubts, theories, and emotional goodbyes. Some believed the chapter was closed forever, while others tried to hold on to small details that felt like echoes of a fading past. The absence felt harsh, and the silence became the biggest trigger of all. Every move was scrutinized, every schedule compared, and every lack of interaction seemed to confirm the fear that something meaningful had been left behind. But just when the narrative seemed to settle, something shifted. What seemed like an end slowly began to feel like a pause. A glance here, a coincidence there, a familiar energy resurfaced when no one expected it. Fans who had already accepted disappointment suddenly found themselves questioning everything again. The comeback didn't come quietly or gently. It came in a way that shook assumptions and turned the story upside down. Rather than simply reappearing, it felt bold, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The kind of comeback that doesn't demand attention, but commands it nonetheless. People began revisiting moments they'd previously overlooked. Clips that once seemed insignificant were replayed with a new perspective. Expressions, body language, parallel actions, and mirrored habits became impossible to ignore. What once felt like distance now seemed more like restraint. What seemed like an ending began to resemble preparation. The more fans connected the dots, the clearer it became that the story was far from over. In fact, it seemed stronger, more confident, and more intense than ever. What made this comeback even more crazier was the contrast. After so much silence, the energy felt explosive. It wasn't loud in the obvious sense, but powerful in how it flowed naturally. A familiar comfort emerged without forcing itself into the spotlight. The chemistry that people thought was gone suddenly felt undeniable, not recreated, not exaggerated, but still there waiting. That realization hit harder than any dramatic announcement. The online reaction reflected pure shock. Those who had once said it was over began to doubt. Longtime fans who had never stopped believing felt vindicated, while new fans tried to catch the emotional roller coaster. The narrative shifted from it's over to what really happened, and the question spread like wildfire. Because this comeback didn't just deny the end, it rewrote the entire timeline. The evidence didn't come as a single moment, but as a series of details that felt too consistent to ignore. The kind of evidence that didn't scream, but quietly accumulated until it became overwhelming. A familiar dynamic reappeared, an ease, a trust, a wordless understanding that couldn't be faked. It reminded everyone why their bond was so captivating in the first place. And that's why this comeback felt different. It wasn't just about nostalgia. It was about evolution, about something that hadn't disappeared, but had matured beyond public expectations. What people thought was over may have simply faded from view, only to return stronger, clearer, and more undeniable than ever. Now the question isn't whether Jikook is over. The real question is what will happen next. Because if this comeback is what it's all about, then the future of the story may be even more unpredictable than the ending everyone thought they saw coming. As time went on, the conversation around Jikook grew heavier, almost emotional in a way that only longtime fans could fully understand. This wasn't just about missed interactions or quiet phases anymore. It became about memory, attachment, and the feeling of watching something meaningful slowly slip out of sight. Many fans tried to rationalize it, telling themselves that people grow, priorities change, and dynamics naturally evolve. Others refused to accept that explanation, sensing that there was more happening behind the scenes than what was visible on the surface. The divide grew wider, and the debates became more intense with each passing month. The silence was interpreted in countless ways. For some, it was proof of distance. For others, it felt deliberate, almost protective. Fans noticed how certain patterns never completely disappeared. Even when things seemed calm, timing continued to align in strange ways. choices mirror each other too closely to be coincidental. The energy, although subtle, never completely fades. It was as if something was being carefully held back rather than lost. Then came moments that didn't fit its over narrative at all. Moments that feel too familiar, too natural, too emotionally consistent with the past. These weren't loud declarations or obvious fan service. They were quiet, almost accidental glimpses that carried weight because of how real they felt. And those moments sparked something powerful within the fandom. Doubt turned into curiosity. Curiosity turned into analysis. Analysis turned into realization. What shocked everyone was how effortless the return felt. There was no awkward rebuilding, no forced reconnection. The dynamic snapped back into place like it had never left. The comfort, the mutual awareness, the shared space that felt instinctive rather than planned. It reminded fans that some bonds don't need constant visibility to exist. They simply continue, even when unseen. People began rewatching old content, not out of nostalgia, but to compare. And the similarities were undeniable. The same energy was there, only more controlled, more grounded. It didn't feel like a repeat of the past. It feels like growth, like something that had been refined rather than erased. That realization alone changed how many fans viewed the entire situation. The idea that Jikook was finished started to sound less like truth and more like assumption. An assumption built on absence rather than evidence. And when evidence finally appeared, it didn't just challenge that assumption. It dismantled it completely, because what was visible now carried intention. It feels conscious, aware, and confident. The reaction across platforms was immediate. Shock, disbelief, excitement, emotional overload. Fans who stepped back found themselves pulled in again. Those who stayed quiet felt validated. Even skeptics struggled to explain what they were seeing without rethinking their stance. The narrative was no longer simple, and that complexity made the return even more compelling. What makes the situation so intense is that it doesn't rely on one dramatic moment. It's a pattern, a rhythm, a consistency that builds over time. The kind of proof that doesn't need confirmation because it speaks through behavior rather than words. That's why it feels stronger than before, because it doesn't ask to be believed. It simply exists. And perhaps that's the most powerful part of this return. It doesn't feel like something being shown for approval. It feels like something continuing regardless of who is watching. That quiet confidence is what separates this phase from everything that came before it. As fans look ahead, the uncertainty isn't frightening anymore. It's exciting, because the story is clearly still unfolding. And if this is a level of impact created by subtle moments alone, then whatever comes next might redefine everything people thought they understood about Jikook. Everyone thought it was over. Everyone thought the chapter had closed. But now it's clear that the story never truly ended. It just waited for the right moment to be seen again, stronger, deeper, and more unforgettable than ever before. And with that, the story doesn't end here. What everyone once believed was finished is clearly far from over. The signs are there, the moments keep adding up, and the energy feels stronger than ever. Whether you believe from the start or you're only just starting to see it now, one thing is clear. This chapter is only beginning. So what do you think? Is this really just coincidence? Or is something much bigger unfolding right in front of us? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from done. If you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stay curious, stay open-minded, and stay with me. Because if this comeback is already this crazy, what comes next might change everything. Purple Heart Fire.